Hello and welcome to the Candidate Lounge podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tom Bennett. Thank you for tuning in to what is a rather special episode of the podcast as we look back at what is surely the most unique year in ours, yours, and all of our history. Despite the world coming to a halt as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, it fills me with pride to say that Sky Betting and Gaming was able to stay true to its ambition to grow in 2020 and to continue to diversify our business. I'm going to whet your appetite with some quick stats here, first of all, because in the last calendar year, we made a whopping 506 external hires. And at the time of recording this podcast, a staggering 20% of our business has been hired, onboarded, and integrated into our business remotely, and as a result, has never met another colleague face to face. Now, I couldn't be joined by three more appropriate guests to tell the story of how this was made possible, so I'll shut up for a minute and I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Ellie, People Support Manager at Sky Betting and Gaming.
Hi, my name is Usman Shako. I am the Enterprise IT Regional Manager here at Sky Betting and Gaming, and I've been with the organisation for over 7 years.
Hi, I'm Clive Smart. I'm the Head of Talent Acquisition here at Sky Betting and Gaming. Been with the business about 6 years now.
Awesome. How long have you been with us, Ellie? Because Usman and Clive said.
I know, that really threw me off. I was like, was I supposed to say that? Just over 2 years.
Awesome. Okay, so I think it's only right to start this podcast by casting our minds back to Tuesday, the 17th of March, 2020. So I would like you, first of all, to give us a glimpse of the chaos and what it was like to be faced with the prospect of mobilizing an entire workforce to work from home. So from a people support and an enterprise IT perspective, put us in your shoes for a minute. What was that day like and how did you go about making that happen?
So I guess from a people support point of view, so I think it was the Monday when we had to make that decision. So we got into work on the Monday, normal day. Actually, I remember being on the train and everyone was joking about how packed it was and saying like, oh, COVID, because it was like kind of a thing in the news, but it wasn't until literally that Monday when Boris came on TV. And I remember everyone being in the office, like crowded around the screens, listening to what he was saying. And he was like, from that point on, that's when he was saying businesses, start to send your people home. So from a people support point of view, we literally, on that Monday, had to go into complete planning mode. And we had a huge area of the business that didn't even work on laptops. So Usman, I'll let you talk about that. But, they worked on monitors, so they didn't even have the capacity to work from home. And we literally, in about 5 hours, had to get everybody sent home and pretty much set for remote working.
Yeah, for me, it was a lot of questions and queries from my employees because obviously it became a reality that it looked like we were going to start working from home. So I think first and foremost, what we did was we put a remote working guide together and got this distributed out. So what that did was it covered sort of the fundamentals that were required from working from home, like a step-by-step process for VPN setup, how to sort of connect to meetings, how to start virtual whiteboard sessions, and just reminding our users of the tools that we have to collaborate and stay connected. Eddie obviously briefly mentioned about sort of our customer experience teams. So they were at the time heavily relied upon physical desktops in the office, and they've never been set up for remote working. So it was quite a race against time, getting sort of such a high volume of laptops image prepped, and then taking them through the process of getting them onboarded and set up with VPN. But thankfully we managed it. And then the other thing I remember is just people coming, collecting stuff off their desks, monitors, docking stations, keyboards, the whole works, and just exiting the buildings and making their way home. Thankfully, we had InfoSec team who gave us a hand, and they managed the distribution of all that kit and made sure that it was logged, most importantly.
I want to know what it was like, though. I want to know what went on in that room when you first looked at each other within the enterprise IT team and sort of, right, we're going to have to do this overnight. Was it panic stations? Was it sort of business as usual? Were you prepared for it? Or, tell me what that was like.
We certainly weren't prepped for it, no doubt. I don't think many people were. So I think it was a bit panicky, if I'm honest. But I guess we just knuckled down and kind of made a quick list of all the tasks that were required and what needed to be done, and gave everybody sort of dedicated work to get on with. And we got it done. It was tough. It really was tough. But we just saw it as a challenge. It was, yeah.
Awesome. I guess we're a business that's been built on collaboration and face-to-face interaction primarily. So this is going to be a huge culture shock for us, no doubt. But physically, as a business, how well equipped were we for this transition, and what were the biggest challenges for us to achieve a new normal? And that's a phrase that I'm going to end up saying about 50 times over the next 45 minutes or so. So I'll apologize in advance. From a tech perspective, were we geared up for it pretty well?
I would say so. I would say, the majority of our employees, are set up for remote working. They have a laptop, no problems. Obviously, it was just customer experience teams that were not. But I think we did get some luck, if I'm honest, because those laptops that we had were actually in the process of being recycled. If we didn't have those laptops, don't ask me what we do. I'm not too sure, because obviously all our vendors were struggling for stock at that time as well, because all the other companies were in panic station and ordering absolutely everything. So there's a limited in stock. So I think some sort of luck did play in our favor. But yeah, we managed it.
Were there any tech that I guess there was some gap analysis, and they probably went, there's a list of things here that we don't have that we need in order to sort of make this work and achieve a BAU with everyone from home. Was there anything sort of that springs to mind, or anything obvious that we kind of looked at and thought, we're going to need this moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was a period where there was a recruitment freeze, which gave us a bit of time to rethink our strategy for onboarding new starters. Currently, what we had certainly wasn't fit for purpose. And there was a zero-touch deployment, which was on enterprise systems roadmap at the time. But that was more further down the year. But obviously, due to the circumstances we were in, it was brought forward, and enterprise systems did a terrific job in getting that implemented within the time that we had. So basically what that allowed us to do was deploy corporate devices in bulk without having to manually set up each device. So we knew that was fundamental for us.
Bro, Ellie, there was an element to leaving the office doors shut behind us and heading home that we haven't touched on yet, and that's that there was a pretty sizable list of candidates who we'd hired, and Clive and the TA team had done a really good job of getting through the door, but obviously hadn't been through the door, and were waiting to join, and we were faced with the prospect of, can we still uphold that commitment, and if so, how do we do it? So how did the people support team manage that dilemma?
So I guess from that first day, it was very much, because we had some people who had already come in on that Monday, so they, they'd already joined, they got the kit as normal. We had quite a few who were actually meant to start on the Tuesday. So we really had to be, because obviously the people support team, we support not only like new people joining the business, but the entire business as well. So we very much this week, it was, Usman was saying there about kind of like the panic from like the tech side. We had so much kind of, a bit like spaghetti brain, like there were so many problems with this first week that we had to like consider from an employee, new starter, everything. We just had to kind of take it as it came. So first step was all those new starters who were meant to be joining us Tuesday, like strict instructions, do not come to the office, wait for further instruction. And then I guess to keep it consistent with our new starters, we spoke to you as a recruitment team, and we asked if all communication could go through people support, to keep it as like one team, one person that they knew who they could go to, so they weren't getting different messages, or not, do I go to my recruiter, do I go to people support, who do I go to? And it was really tough decisions as a business to kind of make for the new starters. Nobody knew how long it was going to last. We originally said 2 weeks we were going to be working from home. We're now here nearly a year on, and we're all still working remotely. I don't think anybody kind of imagined it would last this long, but we didn't know the impact it was going to have on the business, on anything. So we just had to look at every new starter that we had come in for like the next month. Like Usman said, there was a recruitment freeze, and we compiled all the information for leadership, and it was them who ultimately made the decisions as to who we continued to look to onboard remotely for business need for that role. It was crucial, we couldn't do without it. And then unfortunately there were a few roles that we had to withdraw.
Yeah, Clive, I think from a recruitment perspective, there was almost a feeling of hopelessness here, wasn't there? Because it kind of fell out of our hands, and we had to put relationships with candidates that we'd built over the last, month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months to one side in the pursuit of consistency and kind of fairness throughout the process, leaving them in the hands of the more than capable hands of people support. But that was difficult, wasn't it?
It was, and we always do like to put people first at the heart of everything we do. But I think when we initially left on that Monday and Tuesday, like Ellie said, we thought we were coming back a week later. We thought we were just going away for a week whilst the office was deep cleaned. My panic on that Monday was, I've got 20 pairs of Adidas trainers under my desk.
At least.
They're going to get destroyed by the deep clean. I've got, 5-6 years worth of clothes that I've got in the basement because I commute to work. It's how do I get these home? And we still thought that we'd be back in a week's time, and it grew and grew to the point, like I say, I've never been back really to the office. So we did have to change our whole ways of working. One of the biggest challenges we had as a recruitment team was we didn't have access really to technology to help us recruit virtually. So, for example, we didn't even have a corporate Zoom license at the time. But I think the thing that was good when we initially left was our leadership team. They were really clear and transparent with what was going on. They were meeting on a daily basis. They were actually informing the business of what was going on behind the scenes. So there were some decisions that were made that were ultimately made to protect people's livelihoods that were already employed. But we just had to wait a little bit of time before we could communicate out to those people we'd been dealing with, which normally in a normal world we'd have been able to give them the answers. But unfortunately, we had to look at the bigger picture until it was made a little bit more clear to us.
Yeah. Ellie, you touched a moment ago on the fact that we had to lose some candidates who we'd previously made a commitment to, and this is one of them things we could just use this podcast to gloss over all the really positive things that have gone on over 2020. But there were some really difficult and some hard conversations that especially you as a team had to have with candidates, and that must have been a pretty horrible process to have had to go through.
Yeah, it was. It's never nice, especially in something like a pandemic, and when you're hearing on the news about all these, jobs that people losing and the economy and everything. It's never a nice job to have to ring somebody and tell them that job they thought that they were starting in 3 weeks, which to them they probably thought, oh, brilliant, I'm lucky, I've got a job, I'm starting in 3 weeks. Not a nice situation at all, and it was just one that we had to really deal with as sensitively as we could, and just at the end of the day, apologise. It was out of our hands. It was never a decision that as a business we would ever want to make, and it's not a decision that we or leadership would ever take lightly. So we did try to keep as many roles as we could, but there were a few.
As a business though, we did keep quite a lot of vacancies and offers and honour them. There were a lot of other competitors out there that it was a blanket, we're actually going to renege your offer, which unfortunately those businesses had to do that. Some of the people unfortunately we had to say no to, we actually did re-engage with them later down the line, and some of those people actually did join us a couple of months after the original planned start date, and there was a few people that we had to renege offers to. Luckily they'd not actually handed their notice in with the employer, so they actually weren't out of a job, so they could come back at a later date either to engage with ourselves or other people looking for those positions.
That's right, and one of the other casualties at the time was our Tech Academy, which is our sort of homegrown influx of young talent that we bring in cohorts and develop in the business alongside them studying for their qualifications in whatever it is they may be doing. And that was delayed, I think, from September to January 2021. So I think as we're speaking, we're lucky enough to be joined by that cohort of Tech Academy grads. So it's great to have them at last. So after a brief transition then, it became apparent that the world was going to keep on turning and that the business cogs were going to keep on moving. The need to grow and to scale our business naturally returned, and that produced a whole new challenge for us, didn't it, Clive, in that we had never recruited remotely before?
No. We'd recruited a little bit remotely before. We've hired software engineers from various parts of Europe, but not in huge numbers, and Brexit actually sort of killed that for us as a business. Not as many people wanted to relocate. When we'd done it in the past, it tended to be we'd borrow the free 40-minute Zoom account, we'd use FaceTime, we'd use Teams. We never had really a corporate tool to video interview people. we were all more about the face-to-face interaction. So we'd rather fly a candidate over from Romania to meet us rather than actually we'll get on a Zoom call. So for us, it was changing our ways of working and our ways of hiring. So we had to put together a virtual hiring plan from the start.
Yeah. And I guess from your perspective, Usman, was there a list of things that we had to come to you with and just sort of say, this is what we're going to need to be able to make this happen and to be able to to be able to keep growing and keep hiring in the volume that we've got mapped out?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we obviously transitioned to virtual onboarding of our new starters. So obviously, traditionally, what we'd have is new starters would turn up on the tech bar, and we'd go through the sort of onboarding, get them logged in, and answer any sort of questions that they might have. And we felt it was really important to keep that touch point with our new starters. So what myself and Ellie's team decided was that we would call new starters on their agreed time slot, which people support would arrange. And also what we would also do was send a new starter guide, which includes a sort of detailed step on the setup itself.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing, Clive, from a recruitment perspective, is there's a bit of a change of mindset, isn't there? Both from a talent partner's point of view, but also from a hiring manager's point of view when it comes to hiring remotely. And there's a list of things that people need, not only physical things, but I guess there's an education piece, isn't there, in terms of the differences of hiring remotely and things that you've got to consider that perhaps you wouldn't have had to when sat opposite someone in a room.
Yeah, in those early couple of weeks, we still were dealing with hiring managers saying, unless I can meet this person face to face at some point, I'm still not going to be able to make them an offer. So we had to change their mindset. We had to realise that it's going to be a virtual interview, and it's how do we actually get that virtual interview to actually gain all that value. But there's a lot of interactions normally with a face-to-face interview that would be missed. So one of the things that we want to bring back into the interview was some of that water cooler chat, so we break the ice. I think that the virtual interview actually has a lot more benefits than, shall we say, the negatives that a lot of people tended to focus on. So benefits for the candidate is you're not having to take time off work. You can do it when it sort of suits you. Often hiring manager availability at our end is really hard to find. Also room availability, so it's a lot easier to actually schedule these. I think initially people were reluctant to do a video interview because we'd never done it before. How many people had been on a Zoom or a Teams call prior to lockdown one? Not many people. So those first couple of weeks or even first couple of months, I'd say were pretty hard for any business recruiting. But I think over time people got used to it, their confidence grew, people were more likely to actually turn the camera on. So initially we had some of our hiring managers that wanted to keep the camera off. So it was just about changing the way that we work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess from an interviewing perspective, how did I know that you and your team put a guide together for candidates and for managers, just in terms of things to consider and sort of hints and tips for when you're in that situation that was already really awkward and already really difficult for a lot of people, and now with it being remote is even more so. What were the sort of things that the considerations that you asked people to put in place, or kind of learnings for people to consider when going into that situation?
So initially the leadership team asked me, how do we actually do virtual hiring? So I went off, did some research, put the guides together for both hiring managers and candidates. And then obviously the recruiters then got to understand these. So it's a question of presenting the guides to the candidates and hiring managers, but it was some some simple things. So it's like the basics, like have a glass of water to hand. How many times do you get that dry mouth moment when you're actually in an interview? But if you were in a face-to-face interview, the interviewer normally offers you a glass of water when you come into reception. And also it was getting used to those distractions that we get. I think you've all seen that BBC clip where the man's presenting and the baby appears. And I think we just had to get used to that potentially could happen when you're actually in your video interview. So we allowed for those distractions where it might be the dog appears, the kids occur. We've got to remember we're actually working in people's home environments at the moment, but also they've still got to try and perform their day jobs and do day-to-day interviews. And I think if this had been pre-COVID, that would have potentially cost a candidate a job, I think, in some companies if they had a distraction. But I think now we're sort of used to it. We're adults, we're expecting it, but also let's, pause for a moment and then restart, rather than it being actually, it's a no from me. We've made a decision on something that actually doesn't actually reflect on that candidate's ability to do those jobs. One of the things that we did as well a couple of months into the virtual hiring was actually we surveyed candidates that had been through the process. So we actually reached out to 300 candidates that we'd virtually interviewed, both candidates that had accepted and not accepted, or actually didn't get offered, to actually think about what things could we do to improve the process. And so there was minor tweaks that we made to make it better for everybody.
And I think that what that data also captured was that there was an education piece to be done with some of our managers when it came to interviewing as well, not just candidates. I think there are things that you pick up on, aren't there, in an interview when you're talking. It's things like body language, a smile, things that tell you you're on the right track or the wrong track. And some of the feedback I know from candidates was suggesting that that was becoming really hard from a virtual perspective, and it was really tough to pick up on some of those signals. So I know that you put a similar guide together for interviewers as you did for interviewees.
Yeah, sometimes we make those decisions, those natural cues that you pick up, and often the decisions are made at early doors into any interview. So it was actually educating managers not to actually make an initial impression of the candidate and actually look at a balanced view of how they've performed. But also with some candidates as well, is sometimes actually it's like, do we need to give them another chance at the virtual interview? Or in some areas of our business, we've actually offered to candidates where we've given them a practice interview or a virtual coffee with a hiring manager, because there are some people out there that aren't using this technology, so we don't want to set them up to fail. And also one of the things that we do say to our candidates is, if you're not that familiar with virtual interviewing or virtual technology or video interviewing, is practice with a friend, friends and family. They can give you some of those tips and pointers, so actually hopefully you can be a success when you do it.
Brilliant. So I guess the next challenge in the process is the process of vetting candidates remotely, because we're a really highly regulated business and we sit in a really highly regulated sector. So there's a number of hoops that we need to jump through before we can officially hire someone or onboard someone. And that historically has been a face-to-face process that's been managed in conjunction with our people support team. So Ellie, what adjustments have we had to make in order to be able to sort of maintain the level of vetting that our industry upholds us to?
So we're really lucky. We work with Experian already on like right to work. So we use a right to work app before we went into lockdown. That is something that they've been able to actually adapt to virtually onboarding. So we are really lucky that we've got that, which allows us to keep track of all the right to works that we haven't seen in person, so that we can regulate that. And when we do return to the office, we can make sure that we tick that and we see everybody's physically. I think the main hoop, I guess, which you can definitely vouch for, would be the background checks, because previously we have been able to bring people on site, not give them access, but we've been able to get them on site on their start date if maybe we were still just waiting for an adverse financial. But now, because we're sending kit out to people's houses, we can we cannot do that. We cannot give them anything until everything's back and it's all confirmed. So that's probably been the biggest hoop and challenge, and to get our heads around, okay, well, a background check on average takes 5 weeks, so we can't offer anybody a start date within 5 weeks. So
yeah. I think from recruitment perspective, Clive, was that a big adjustment to make in some cases?
Yeah, it's still one of those that we're trying to get our heads around, because for us, we like to get people onboarded and started as soon as possible, because whilst ever they're waiting to start, you've potentially got other people that are approaching those people about jobs. And some of the people that we recruit are so high in demand in the marketplace as well. So delaying their start date a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, it's not the best experience. But I can see from a business perspective that we need to be protected. And also we're in this virtual world, being at home, so we have to make some small adjustments.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess it's one thing hiring someone, and it's one thing someone joining a business, but it's a completely other thing helping someone feel that they are a part of a business and that they are now an employee with a circle of trust and a network around them, when actually they're sat at home behind a laptop and they've never met anyone. So what we'll talk about next is that process and how we've been able to maintain the induction program that a candidate would go through if they were to come and join us face to face in a remote world. So I guess all three of you had a hand in that. So I don't even know where to start.
I'll kick off.
Yeah.
I think the initial thing is obviously once you kind of made the offer, it's from that point. So obviously recruitment's kind of like the contact up until probably the week before, which is when we start to kick off that process that Usman mentioned earlier. So my team worked really, really closely with Usman's team to make sure that this runs as smoothly as possible. And, you know, on the whole, for the candidate, it is a very, very smooth process. They get the kit, they get the tech appointment, off they go. But the work that goes into that behind the scenes from my team and Usman's team is huge. It takes up so much of our week, so much of our time. Like you wouldn't even be able to imagine how much time that takes. So we work really, really closely to get the week before somebody starts, they'll get their email with the tech appointment time and everything. And then generally 90% of new starters have that kit before the first day. They have that call, like Usman said, with the tech bar engineer, and then off they go. In the office, it was so much easier to make sure that the onboarding experience that everybody got was kind of, it was very similar and it was the same. You know, they got their welcome on reception in the first day, the manager would come down, they'd meet the teams. They had a very packed induction schedule for the first few weeks. We had like 7 inductions that we used to do, including we'd take them out for lunch. You know, they had an all-day product experience day, which was, you know, so much fun for them. We were suddenly faced with this challenge. We just couldn't do that remotely. So we had to make a decision as to which inductions we kept, how do we turn them virtual. So we kind of had to pause onboarding in that interim when we were also waiting for new starters to get kit. And we just had to really reflect and look at it all. And we now do 3 inductions. So we chose the ones that we kind of thought were the most important. So for example, leadership introduction, which is a chance for new starters literally get to sit on a call opposite a member of leadership, ask the questions. It's something that, you know, not many businesses do. When do you ever get the chance to sit down with somebody, you know, on the board and say like, you know, I've got this question, or I want to know how you find this, or how does Sky Bet in gaming, what's their approach to this? But it has been really hard because you put in a lot of trust in your managers, because outside of those inductions and that first day with Usman's team, how do you make sure that, you know, the experience that new starters are getting are very different? And I know I virtually hired somebody during this pandemic myself, and it is so difficult that first few weeks trying to integrate somebody into a team and make them feel welcome and, you know, like they've been part of the team forever. It's not the easiest. So hats off to all the managers who have remotely onboarded new starters in the last year.
And I remember on my first day, one of the sort of key things is being walked over to the tech bar and meeting tech engineers and sort of sitting there helplessly while you get all your kit set up. But that's a really important, you know, bit of interaction and that's a relationship that you build and that you'll lean on heavily for the rest of your SPG career. So how did you guys Usman, how did you guys in that team go ahead and replicate that and maintain that that sort of crucial part of a first day or week?
Yeah, so we make sure anybody who's a new starter starting the company still kind of gets that sort of interaction from us. So we'll obviously call them up, introduce ourselves, who we are, make sure that they're logged in, they're set up, they're fully aware of the important systems, and just there for any questions that they might have. And I think one thing we have improved on our guides as well, because, you know, with people being remote, it's important for them to revert to any useful guides that they might have, which will potentially answer their questions. So like the new starter guide and many of the guides that we've now built upon, our employees can refer to at any time.
And Clive, one of the crucial sort of relationships that any new starter leans on, certainly throughout their first couple of months, is the relationship that they've had with the recruiter that you know that helps to bring them in. So is that something that you and the team were really keen to maintain?
We're always keen to maintain that relationship. We've put all that work in to try and secure that individual to come and join us. It's not the end of the relationship. And also we like to, speak to these people to hopefully get some referrals to as well. I think they want that person they can come to and chat to, even if it's things, how do I do this? Who do I need to speak to? A lot of us have been in many years and we'd like to help and signpost people the best we can. We want them to have a great experience and we want them ultimately to stay and be a success. So we're always happy to chat to them. We always get in touch with people. We often say hi to them on Slack on their first day or week. And also it's about forming those relationships with the people. Over the years, I've hired some amazing people at Skybet that I'm still in touch with. We don't always chat about recruitment. We don't always chat about work. And I think we just want to try and build on that and maintain it.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that the inductions give you is a really nice network of people that you've joined alongside. I remember my induction, so you're in a room of sort of 10 to 15 people, all of whom have joined that week. And, you still, every time you see those people, you stop and chat to them in the corridor or on the way to Sainsbury's or whatever. So I guess, Ellie, it was really important to try and uphold that network of people that every candidate's gonna get introduced to on their first week.
Yeah, so we try to keep the groups the same if we can for all the inductions, and we do icebreakers and try and have the first induction generally is the people one, which is the one that me and my team deliver, and we try and just have a bit of fun with it. We try and keep it real lighthearted, getting everyone chatting and joking between them, which they really do, and it's lovely to see that we've still achieved that, and that they've never met each other and they're just ribbing each other and taking the mick out of each other, having a laugh on these inductions, which is really nice because it is really difficult. And it's nice for us that we've managed to keep that, because again, it's really important for us. That's why we've always in the office as well had that as the first induction, so that people know who we are, so that they can come to us with absolutely anything, throughout the whole time at SBG, but especially in those first few weeks, like you said. And we do, and we get new starters messaging us straight afterwards saying thanks so much, I'm loving it, I'm enjoying it. And I think what's great is that we start every induction asking them how it's been, and we get so many new starters telling us that from being recruited by yourselves through to these first few weeks, it's the best recruitment and onboarding experience they've ever had, even though it's virtual. So against all the other businesses I've worked at where they've had in-person inductions, they still find ours the best. Which is really, really nice to hear, because it's a bit imagine if we were in the office. How would you find it then? But no, it's been great what we've done.
Bro, and I guess all of that is underpinned essentially by technology and by the work that Usman and the team do. So it's a really nice sort of three-way collaboration piece in terms of the three teams on this call, and it's obviously testament to all of you for getting it done. But another really key element of the induction, certainly that I remember when I started, was the introduction to leadership and senior leaders within the business. And in the current climate, it is still the current climate, sadly, even in Jan 2021. We're still in the thick of it. In and amongst the COVID-19 pandemic, I guess the message from leadership and sort of as much information on the direction at which the direction of travel that the business is moving on is really important. And I guess that was a really key part of the inductions too, in terms of settling any questions or nerves that people might have upon joining.
Yeah, and they've just been honest from the outset, and those first few weeks, months to be fair, you can imagine leadership were absolutely, you could not get hold of them for anything, but they all made sure that they freed up this hour for new starters to do this induction. We actually went to leadership and we said, look, if this is one of the inductions you want us to, remove for the time being, we can. And I think it was Rick Barker who said, absolutely not, it's so important that we still do this for new starters now more than ever. It's a really crucial part of the induction program, and so that we can, answer questions, we can be honest, we can be transparent and settle anyone's nerves.
I think it's the bit that makes our business great, is the fact that everybody knows who the leadership team are. Anyone can speak to the leadership team. They are really visible, even in a remote world. When we are in the office, they don't sit in an office, you can go up, they'll sit next to you as well. And I think it's just trying to maintain that as well. And also I think the transparency from our leadership team helps. I've worked in other businesses where You never ever hear from senior leadership ever. You're not allowed to speak to them. You've got to speak to them only if you're at the same level as them. There's none of that at Sky Betting and Gaming. I think that's one of the things that makes it a success, but also brings us together. There's more of a family feel.
Absolutely. But I guess the comfort element from when it comes to remote working doesn't just come from the business that you're joining and the leadership team and all of that great stuff. A lot of it is the physical stuff. What's your setup at home? What kit have you got access to? What are you sat on? Because I think when we started, I think we did a lot of surveys, didn't we, and to sort of find out how well equipped people were for this transition. And when you're finding out that some people have sat on a bed in a 1-bedroom apartment, or don't even have a desk in or somewhere in the house that they can work remotely in a sort of comfortable and quiet space. I think we all had a sort of look at ourselves and sort of said, what do we need to do to make this experience better for everyone? And I know your team, Usman, had a lot to do in terms of finding out what kit everyone needed to be successful and making sure that was all distributed to them. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we had an influx of monitor requests, that's for sure. But no, it was a good approach from the leadership team. We accommodated everybody with what they required to make sure they were comfortable. And had a good sort of working from home setup. We had tons of requests, but we actioned them all, and hopefully everybody's in a comfortable state now.
Yeah, everything from monitors to desk chairs. I'm sat on mine, which was couriered directly to me from the office. Really impressive as well. It's actually my chair. I think, Clive, you got your chair as well, and you were pretty keen on that, weren't you?
Yeah, it's a chair that I've had for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's actually got my name Tipex underneath the chair.
Brilliant. So in terms of actually getting that chair to you, shed a bit of light on, Usman, if you could shed a bit of light on what that process is like and what teams are involved, because we sent out a lot more than just chairs, didn't we?
Absolutely. So, our internal facilities teams worked with our facilities management service provider, who basically acted as a courier for us. They delivered chairs, desks, they collected laptops, replacement laptops. They both did a great job in dealing with all the logistics at such a high volume.
Yeah, I think just to give a huge shout out to our workplace ops team, because they play such a part in this virtual onboarding. I mean, they can even do virtual workstation assessments now to see how someone's home setup is and what they need. So yeah, they're a brilliant team that have been crucial to this.
I think, there were countless of examples of people going above and beyond their role to make sure we delivered in what we did. And, it was very much a collaboration of efforts, I would say. Although it is only me and Ellie here today speaking about our teams, there are certainly other teams that contributed just as much. And without them, we would not have been able to deliver what we have.
And what about things like Wi-Fi and whatnot? Because I know that's obviously if you're a new starter and you're required to do Zoom calls or all sorts, you need a pretty solid connection in some cases. So how did we go about accommodating for line tests for Wi-Fi and making sure everyone was properly equipped to be able to do the work they needed to do?
Yeah, so we offered 4G dongles to sort of our key individuals to provide sort of a backup for those who may experience broadband issues, or if they've ever sort of had any outages from their ISPs. Obviously, I know people moving homes and not had broadband installed, that sort of thing. So we would then arrange 4G dongles for those scenarios.
And Ellie, I think I'm right in saying that our benefits offer changed throughout the first lockdown period to better accommodate people working from home, didn't it, when it came to broadband?
Yeah, I know my internet, so obviously we are very fortunate we get Sky Broadband as a staff benefit. Mine was shocking. Honestly, I wouldn't have got through the first 5 minutes of this call on my old internet, but luckily that package got upgraded so that now you had to pay extra before for the fibre superfast broadband, but now we get that just thrown in as our benefit, no extra cost. And the minute that I got onto that, it was had no problems at all. So we are so lucky as a business that that was just one more way in which we were right, everybody gets super fast broadband.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess one of the other things that I think it's great that we should come on to is the well-being aspect of working from home, because that's something that is as topical as ever. And I think companies have really had to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to well-being throughout this period. And I can imagine a lot of companies have been found out, but I'm really pleased to say that we haven't. And I think we've got a phenomenal internal engagement team. But maybe as a collective, you could share some light on some of the things that we've done and or kept doing, or any of the new things that we've to make sure stays at the sort of forefront of our strategy, and that we're doing everything that we can, to make sure everyone's in the right mental and physical space.
Yeah, so I don't mind starting on this because well-being's kind of like, everything around people's support. People are at the forefront of every single decision that's made. But like you say, well-being, it's been something that businesses that maybe didn't prioritise it before have really had to change the way that they approach everything. But we're so lucky that well-being was always at the forefront of everything that we did. We very much kind of entered the lockdown thinking, right, we need a working from home wellbeing strategy, a COVID wellbeing strategy. And I think what we've realised over the last 12 months is we haven't just been able to be like, right, this is our wellbeing strategy and this is what we're going to do with it. It's been ever changing with the ever changing situation. So we've just changed our approach throughout the whole last 12 months to fit our people. Leadership was so honest from the outset. They, sent an email out to the whole business saying, we're struggling as well. If you've got kids, care and responsibilities, take the time you need, do whatever you need to do, put yourself first. And even now, nearly 12 months on, we're in another lockdown, the same approach has been had. I think one key thing that we did right at the beginning of lockdown was we really wanted to keep the conversation going. There's always a stigma around mental health and talking about if you're struggling. So we started an Honest Conversation live panel series, which was, amazing kind of feedback from staff. And we had leadership on it. We had trading assistants on it. We had tech engineers. Like, we literally got a cross section of the business, different people, to come on and talk for 45 minutes around difficult subjects. So we did COVID-19, we did grief and loss, we did burnout, we did, and just really opening up that conversation and letting everybody know that, if you've got someone from leadership here saying that they're struggling, or a young male in his 20s saying that he's struggling, or a mum saying that she's struggling, then everybody else can also feel like they can talk about it. So that was something really key that we did.
I think also we utilize Office Vibe as well. So, regularly we'll get sort of like a questionnaire, how are you feeling? Are you under a lot of sort of constraints with work, that sort of thing? And, I think the leadership team did a great job in picking up those scores and listening to that feedback that they received. And they put loads of things in place, like spin the wheel. I know we had a company-wide one, but we also had an infra tribe one as well, just to sort of change the dynamics, change the mood, just lift everyone's spirits up. And it definitely helped.
I think it was noticed too, not just internally, but externally as well, wasn't it, Clive, with a couple of accreditations?
Yeah. So we have been awarded 11th place on the Glassdoor Best Companies to Work For list. And a lot of it is just because of how our people have been treated. And also I think a lot of it is because we put well-being at the forefront of everything that we think about. We are a people-first business. I always remember when we left the office, I think it was Conor Grant said, don't sweat the small stuff. And I often think about that sometimes in my job. I can't do everything. I'm a parent. I'm also a carer. And sometimes it's like, I'm not going to get everything ticked off the to-do list today, but they're not expecting me to tick everything off today. I also look after a team of people as well. Everybody's different as well. Everybody's well-being is affected differently in this, pandemic, the whole, remote working scenario. And that's what sometimes I have to think back to, is I don't always look at my own situation. I look at other people, and everybody, like Tom was saying earlier, there'll be people that are living in flats that are sharing, that wasn't their place of work originally. So we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. And there was another accreditation, wasn't there, specifically in terms of well-being from Glassdoor?
It was during the period of the original lockdown. So I think we were in the top 10 best places to work on how we handled it. And a lot of that comes back to the leadership team being transparent, regularly updating people as well, and actually, putting people first as well. And we did have that commitment that weren't going to furlough anybody, and also there were no job losses as well.
Yeah, and there were some pretty cool initiatives that were led by our internal engagement team. SBG Cribs springs to mind as a good one that got us started. Which, if anyone's seen the MTV Cribs program where you kind of get shown around a famous person's house and you have to guess who it is, our leadership replicated that, which was interesting, wasn't it, Ellie?
Yeah, we all love a good nosy into people's houses, don't we? Especially your leadership team.
Absolutely.
I don't think I guessed any of the directors' houses on what guys watched.
I got Simon Ince's because of his car. But that's about it. But there was loads of other things. We utilised various skill sets from employees who were qualified PTs to do workout sessions or cook-alongs and all sorts of things. And as like Osman mentioned earlier, we had the spin the wheel of fortune every Thursday, which might have been the most popular initiative I think I've ever seen at SPG, and not with the finance team, but with everyone else. But yeah, so there was loads of really great initiatives that were sort of led on from not just leadership, all the different teams. The effort to pull together was phenomenal, and I've got to stop saying was because we're still really very much in the thick of it. This is the new normal. It looks like it's going to be for some time. But look, I think the well-being piece feels like a perfect way to end this one. So thank you all. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I'm sure we're going to do it again because it doesn't look like this is going to end anytime soon. So watch this space. For anyone interested in a career here at Sky Betting and Gaming, and why wouldn't you be after that little sell? Please check out skybetcareers.com. I'll make sure there's a link to the careers site within touching distance of wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. And once again, thank you so much for tuning in. We're grateful for you. We welcome your feedback, and we're keen to know what else you'd like to hear discussed in the Candidate Lounge podcast. So from the four of us, take care. Goodbye.